The embers of the dying fire cast long shadows across the ancient stone walls of the great hall. Younglings of the Xylithian tribe gathered around the hearth, their emerald eyes reflecting the flickering flames. They leaned in, antennae twitching with anticipation, as the elder warrior, Ralek, took his place on the carved obsidian throne. His scales bore the marks of countless battles, each scar a story etched into his flesh. "Tell us of the great war, Ralik," one of the younglings dared to ask, his voice barely above a whisper. Ralik's gaze swept over the eager faces before him. "Ah, the great war," he rumbled, his voice deep and resonant. "A time of darkness and despair, when the shadows of the Velnor Empire sought to consume the galaxy. But it was also a time of unexpected alliances and unyielding courage." He paused, his eyes distant as memories flooded back. "You have heard tales of many species, the mighty warriors of the Karash, the cunning strategists of the Silran, but few speak of the humans." The younglings exchanged puzzled glances. Humans were a lesser-known species, whispers in the annals of galactic history. "Humans?" another youngling echoed. "Weren't they the fragile ones from the Outer Rim?" Ralek chuckled softly. "Fragile? Perhaps in appearance, but appearances can be deceiving." He leaned forward, the firelight illuminating the sharp angles of his face. "Let me tell you of the Battle of Xerxes II, where I witnessed the true spirit of humanity. The year was 786 of the galactic calendar. The Xylithian forces had been pushed back to the fringes of their territory. The Velnor Empire, ruthless and relentless, had decimated one planet after another. Xerxes II was our last stronghold, a barren world with crimson skies and jagged mountains that pierced the clouds like serrated blades. Our defenses were faltering, supplies dwindled, morale was low, and whispers of defeat began to poison the ranks. I, Ralek, had been appointed commander of the remaining forces, a ragtag assembly of warriors too stubborn to accept defeat. As we prepared for the inevitable assault, a message arrived from an allied fleet. Reinforcements were en route. Hope flickered, but when the ships breached the atmosphere, skepticism rippled through our ranks. They were human vessels, smaller, less armored, hardly the formidable allies we had imagined. From the lead ship emerged their commander, a man named Daniel Hayes. He stood before me, clad in a worn uniform, eyes steely with determination. "Commander Ralek," he said, extending a hand, "we come to fight alongside you." I regarded him skeptically. "Your assistance is noted, human, but this is no place for the inexperienced." Daniel's lips curled into a wry smile. "Experience isn't measured by stature or show of force. It's earned on the battlefield." I dismissed him with a flick of my claw. "Very well, do as you will." As the humans integrated into our forces, whispers spread. "They are weak," some said. They won't last a cycle," others scoffed. The Velnor attack began at dawn. Their ships darkened the sky, blotting out the pale light of the distant sun. The ground trembled as their landers touched down, disgorging legions of armored soldiers. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and the metallic tang of impending doom. Our artillery roared to life, sending arcs of plasma slicing through the sky. Explosions blossomed like fiery flowers. But the Velnar forces advanced inexorably. Amidst the chaos, I observed the humans. They moved with precision, their smaller frames darting between cover, laying down suppressive fire with uncanny accuracy. Daniel led from the front, his rifle an extension of his will. A squad of Velnar broke through the eastern flank. I watched as a group of human soldiers held the line. One of them, a sharpshooter named Logan Pierce, scaled a ruined tower. From his vanished point, he picked off Velnar troops with lethal efficiency. But then, a Velnar war beast, a towering monstrosity clad in armor, charged their position. The ground quaked beneath its massive feet. The humans held their ground. They coordinated their fire, targeting the beast's vulnerable joints. The creature faltered, let out a deafening roar, and collapsed mere meters from their position. I felt the grudging respect stir within me. As the battle wore on, casualties mounted. The Velnar showed no signs of relenting. In the command center, reports flooded in. Ammunition was low, medical supplies scarce. Daniel approached me, sweat and grime smudging his face. "We need to take out their command ship," he said. I shook my head. "Impossible. Their fleet is impenetrable." He met my gaze unflinchingly. "Not if we distract them. A small team could infiltrate while the main force engages them head-on." I stared at him. "It's a suicide mission." He nodded. "Perhaps, but if we do nothing, we're all dead anyway." I considered his words. The plan was reckless, but bold. "Very well," I agreed. "I will assemble my finest warriors." Daniel placed a hand on my armored shoulder. "With respect, Commander, this requires a different approach. Let my men lead the infiltration." I bristled. "You doubt our abilities?" "Not at all. But we are, accustomed to slipping through the cracks." Reluctantly, I acquiesced. "May fortune favor you." Under the cover of night, Daniel and his team set out. The battlefield was a hellscape of smoldering ruins and scorched earth. Velnar patrols prowled the perimeter, their senses keen. The humans moved like shadows, their dark attire blending with the gloom. They navigated minefields, bypassed sentries, and approached the Velnar command ship, a behemoth that loomed like a mountain of metal. Using grappling hooks and sheer audacity, they ascended the hull. At an access hatch, Daniel signaled to a tech specialist, Tristan Reed, who bypassed the security protocols with practiced ease. Inside the ship, the corridors were labyrinthine, illuminated by the pulsing glow of alien machinery. The team advanced silently, dispatching the occasional guard with swift, lethal strikes. They reached the central command nexus, a vast chamber where the Velnar commanders orchestrated the battle. Daniel signaled his team to set the charges. But fate is seldom kind. An alarm blared. Their presence detected. Doors sealed shut, and from hidden compartments, Velnar drones emerged, weapons primed. "Get those charges set," Daniel barked. The team sprang into action. Gunfire erupted, bullets and plasma bolts crisscrossing the chamber. Daniel weaved through the onslaught, his rifle spitting fire. One by one, his men fell, but not before completing their task. With the charges armed, Daniel shouted into his communicator, "Mission accomplished. Detonate on my mark." Back at the command center, I heard his words, "Daniel, extract immediately." He laughed, a sound devoid of mirth. "No time, Commander. Ensure our sacrifice counts." "Daniel, see you on the other side." The line went dead. A moment later, the night sky was torn asunder by a massive explosion. The Velnar command ship disintegrated in a blinding flash, shock waves rippling across the battlefield. The ground shuddered, and, for a brief moment, all was silent. Then a deafening cheer rose from our troops. The enemy forces were in disarray, their coordination shattered. Seizing the moment, I rallied our warriors. "Charge! Drive them back!" We surged forward with renewed vigor. The Velnar, stunned by the loss of their command, faltered. Our forces pressed the advantage, cutting through their ranks. Amidst the melee, I found myself face to face with a Velnar warlord, a towering figure clad in obsidian armor, eyes burning with malice. "Your resistance is futile," he snarled. I gripped my blade tightly. "As long as we draw breath, we will fight." He lunged, his massive axe cleaving the air. I parried, the force of the blow reverberating up my arm. We traded strikes, the clash of metal echoing amidst the chaos. He swung wide, and I seized the opening, driving my blade into a gap in his armor. He roared in pain, but with a backhanded strike, sent me sprawling. Dazed, I struggled to rise. The warlord loomed over me, weapon raised for the killing blow. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out. The warlord staggered, a bullet hole between his eyes. Behind him stood Logan Pierce, the human sharpshooter who had survived against all odds. He offered me a hand. I couldn't let you have all the fun, Commander. I grasped his hand, pulling myself up. You're a stubborn one. He grinned. Comes with the territory. Together we pressed on. The Velnar forces were retreating, their once indomitable presence reduced to scattered remnants. By dawn the battle was won. Xerxes Tekent remained unconquered. Back in the great hall, Rallick's gaze returned to the present. The younglings sat in rapt silence. Daniel and his team gave their lives for us, he said softly. They knew the risks, yet they faced them without hesitation. One of the younglings spoke up. But why? They were not of our kind. Rallick smiled wistfully. Because they understood something we had forgotten. That unity is strength. That valor knows no species. Another youngling leaned forward. What became of Logan Pierce? Fought beside me until the end of the war, Rallick replied. He returned to his homeworld a hero, but he always downplayed his deeds. Did you ever see him again? Rallick nodded. Many cycles later, during a time of peace. We shared stories, remembered fallen comrades. He is a friend. The younglings exchanged thoughtful glances. Perhaps humans are not as weak as they seem. Indeed, Rallick agreed. They may not possess our strength or resilience, but they have heart, a fire that burns fiercely. Underestimate them at your peril. He rose from his seat, the fire casting a halo around his imposing figure. Remember this lesson. Greatness can be found in the most unexpected places. Judge not by appearances, but by actions. As the younglings dispersed, chattering amongst themselves, Rallick gazed into the dying embers. Memories of the past flickered like ghosts. Faces of comrades, the sound of battle, the sacrifice of those who fought for a cause greater than themselves. A soft football interrupted his reverie. He turned to see an old friend standing in the shadows. Logan, he greeted warmly, I was just speaking of you. The human stepped into the light, his hair now silvered with age, but his eyes still sharp. All good things, I hope. Rallick chuckled. Mostly. They stood side by side, two warriors, bound by shared history. It's been too long, Logan said quietly. Indeed. What brings you to Zilithia? Logan sighed. Rumors, whispers of the Velnar stirring again. Rallick's expression hardened. I had hoped they were extinguished. As did I, but hope isn't the strategy. Rallick nodded slowly. Then it seems our blades are needed once more. Logan smiled faintly, just like old times. Old times? Rallick echoed. Are you up for it, old friend? Logan patted the sidearm at his hip. I may be older, but I've still got a few fights left in me. Rallick placed a clawed hand on Logan's shoulder. Then, we shall face whatever comes together. Weeks later, they stood aboard the bridge of the Xylithian flagship, the Void Strider. Before them stretched a vast expanse of space, dotted with distant stars and the ominous silhouettes of the Velnar fleet. Reports indicate they've been amassing forces near the Kaldor Nebula, Logan remarked, studying the holographic display. Rallick's eyes narrowed. A strategic position. They could launch attacks into multiple systems from there. Logan tapped a command into the console. We need to cut them off, disrupt their supply lines. Rallick glanced at him. Your tactical acumen has improved. He smirked. I've had a good teacher. They coordinated with Allied fleets, Harash warbirds, Silveran cruisers, and notably, a contingent of human ships led by Captain Noah Drake. As the Allied armada approached the nebula, tensions ran high. The Velnar fleet emerged from the swirling cosmic dust, a dark phalanx of destruction. Communications channels buzzed with activity. Captain Drake's voice came through clear and steady. "All units, maintain formation. Wait for the signal." Rowlek addressed the fleet. "Today we stand united against a common foe. Let this be the day we end the Velnar threat once and for all." The Velnar ships opened fire, beams of searing energy lancing toward the Allied forces. The Void Strider shook as explosions erupted around it. "Invasive maneuvers," Rowlek commanded. Fighters swarmed like angry hornets, engaging enemy craft in dizzying dogfights. The sky was alight with the flashes of weapons fire and the debris of destroyed ships. On the bridge, Logan coordinated strikes. "Target their lead destroyer. If we can break their formation, we can drive a wedge through their center." The Void Strider's cannons unleashed a barrage, hammering the enemy destroyer. It listed to one side, flames spewing from its hull. "Now, all ships, advance," Rowlek ordered. The Allied fleet surged forward, capitalizing on the opening. The battle intensified, ships weaving through the maelstrom of combat. Amidst the fray, Captain Drake's ship, the Stalwart, took heavy fire. "We've lost shields," came a strained voice over the comms. Logan responded swiftly. "Hang tight, Stalwart. We're sending support." But it was too late. A Velnar cruiser unleashed a devastating volley. The Stalwart was engulfed in a fiery explosion. A moment of silence hung heavy. "Press on," Rowlek urged, his voice grim. "We can't let their sacrifice be in vain." The Allied forces pushed deeper into the enemy lines. The Velnir fleet began to falter under the relentless assault. Suddenly, alarms blared across the Void Strider's bridge. "Massive energy spike detected," shouted the sensors officer. On the view screen, a massive Velnar dreadnought emerged, a ship of colossal proportions, bristling with weaponry. Logan's eyes widened. They'd been holding back their flagship. The dreadnought opened fire, its main cannon unleashing a beam that sliced through Allied ships like a scythe. Rowlek gritted his teeth. "We need to take that thing down." Logan nodded. "Agreed, but conventional weapons won't cut it." An idea sparked. The dreadnought's reactor, if we can trigger an overload. "But how do we get close enough?" Logan questioned. A voice chimed in over the comms. "Leave that to me." They turned to see the image of a human pilot, Lieutenant Mason Black. "I can get a strike team aboard," Mason continued. "We've got a prototype stealth shuttle." Rowlek hesitated. "It's too dangerous." Mason grinned. "Danger's my middle name." Logan chuckled despite the situation. "They're as crazy as we were." Rowlek relented. "Very well. May the stars guide you." The stealth shuttle, cloaked from detection, weaved through the battlefield. Mason and his team landed inside the dreadnought, moving swiftly toward the reactor core. Encountering heavy resistance, they fought fiercely. The corridors echoed with the sounds of gunfire and explosions. "Plant the charges," Mason ordered. With time running out, they set the explosives. As they made their escape, Mason was hit by enemy fire. "Go!" he shouted to his team. "Get out of here!" They hesitated, but he gave them a stern look. "That's an order." The team retreated to the shuttle, lifting off just as the dreadnought began to erupt from within. On the Void Strider, they watched as the enemy flagship was consumed by a series of massive explosions. The shockwave rippled outward, taking out nearby Velnar ships. Cheers erupted across the fleet. "Their lines are broken," Logan exclaimed. Rowlek seized the moment. "All units, full assault." The Allied forces advanced relentlessly. The Velnar, leaderless and demoralized, began to retreat. Hours later, the battle was over. The Velnar fleet was in shambles, their threat neutralized. But victory was bittersweet. The losses were heavy. In a quiet moment, Rallick and Logan stood on the observation deck, gazing at the remnants of the battlefield. "So many lives," Willock murmured. Logan nodded solemnly. "Freedom always comes at a cost." Rallick turned to him. "But thanks to the courage of those like Mason, the galaxy is safer." Logan smiled faintly. "Humans, still surprising you after all these years." He chuckled. "Indeed, you are a tenacious species." Logan clasped his friend's shoulder. "And together, there's nothing we can't overcome." Rallick looked out into the stars. "Here's to unity." "To unity," Logan echoed. Back on Zalithia, the tale of the battle spread. Songs were sung of the bravery of all who fought. Statues were erected to honor the fallen, Zalithian, human, and all allies alike. In the great hall, Rallick addressed a new generation of warriors. "Remember this. Strength lies not in the might of one's arm, but in the bonds we forge. Prejudice and doubt have no place on the battlefield. Trust in your allies, and you will achieve the impossible." The young warriors listened intently, their eyes shining with determination. As the assembly dispersed, Rallick and Logan watched from a distance. "They'll make fine warriors," Logan observed. Rallick nodded. "The future is in good hands." Logan took a deep breath. "Well, my friend, time for me to head home." Rallick looked at him. "Must you go so soon?" He smiled. "Earth needs me. But I'll be back. After all, someone's got to keep you on your toes." Rallick chuckled. "Safe travels, Logan." They clasped hands, a gesture of deep respect and unbreakable friendship. As Logan departed, Rallick felt a sense of hope. The galaxy was vast and filled with uncertainties, but with allies like Logan and the indomitable spirit of humanity, there was nothing they couldn't face. The stars beckoned, and the legacy of their epic battles would inspire generations to come.